welcome YouTube to a spooky Halloween episode of Astronomy Live. So this is not quite what I thought I was going to be webcasting this morning, but things have not gone as planned. Must be Halloween goblins inhabiting my computer. Plans have gone awry, but didn't want to come away completely empty-handed. So I'm just doing some video here of the moon, obviously. I won't be webcasting for very long this morning. We're looking here at the edge of Mare Imbrium on the moon. And some of the peaks along that edge that are just going into the lunar terminator and into night. Some of them sticking up out into sunlight against the dark backdrop of the night side of the moon. Now, I had intended to track some satellites and do some webcasting of that, but unfortunately, I can't seem to get the capture card for my wide field viewfinder camera to work this morning with my laptop. Now, I tested the capture card on my desktop, and it works just fine. But when I connect it to the laptop, I can't get a single video frame from it. I've tried reinstalling the driver. I've tried rebooting the computer multiple times. I've tried 3 different programs, including my own. None of them receive any video frames from the capture card, but only when plugged into the laptop. So, Halloween goblins have completely goofed up my plans for this morning. I have a theory as to why it happened, but I don't understand the mechanism of why it happened. I uninstalled a piece of software which shouldn't have mattered. It was some bloatware that came with this laptop, and it did interact with the webcams on the computer. Maybe it was somehow critical for that functionality, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I've tried an additional USB webcam, works just fine with the laptop. I've tried the Elgato capture card, which is pulling down HDMI video from the main Canon T5i camera right now, and obviously that's working just fine. So, it's not that somehow my laptop is no longer able to interface with external video sources, it's just that particular video source it doesn't want to talk to this morning. So because of that, I can't track the satellites with my program, because it relies on that camera for video viewfinder. Just swap out a different camera, standard USB webcam style imager. That would be a temporary fix, but I wouldn't want to have to permanently sacrifice the camera I've got. I could also go out and grab a different video capture device and try it that way. That would probably work. There's even, if I can find it, there's even a dongle for the Elgato that will let me pull in an RCA style connection, standard composite video. That ought to work, though not as well. The Elgato model that I have, it's basically a capture card designed for HDMI connections like this. It has a fair bit of lag. Now, you can buy more advanced models that don't have the lag, but it's never been an issue for me. That wasn't one of the constraints I had in mind when I bought this device. So what you're seeing is delayed about a second or so from the real-time video, even before YouTube delay comes into play. So anyway, the reason that's a problem is if you're trying to track satellites, the program is counting on that being pretty much real-time video. If it's laggy, it could induce an oscillation in the control feedback loop, where it just wobbles back and forth trying to center up the satellite. I've coded a solution that should reduce oscillation, but that doesn't account for delay in the camera. It's kind of hard to anticipate that, so it would still oscillate. Let's see. Okay, I don't want to look at that. I think will it let me? No, it won't let me do that. Oh, I guess it will. Okay, good. I just want to brighten and contrast enhance the image a little bit here. So I won't be streaming for too much longer, but I had intended, like I said, to demonstrate the satellite tracking software again this morning with live video and practice that, really, because ultimately I want to be able to live stream the space station, and it looks like I'll be able to do that if I can just figure out how to get my wide field viewfinder camera to work again with the laptop. So at the very least I can verify this morning that the capture card for the Canon works with OBS, open source broadcasting software, for doing live broadcasting. So it works quite well with OBS. I'm quite happy about that. Of course, there's a little bit of lag, but that doesn't really matter if all you're trying to do is just share the live view. There's also a pass-through, HDMI pass-through. I've got hooked up to a second monitor, which is not delayed at all, so I can see the real-time feed if I need to on my end. But in terms of satellite tracking, I'm pretty much out of luck for this morning. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to do that this morning was also to let you guys know that although my SatTraker software is still not available from GitHub due to a false DMCA claim from a vindictive YouTube channel that has it out for me, it is available on Bitbucket. I've put the software up on an alternative to GitHub, Bitbucket, and you can download it there. The link is in the video description of the original upload I did about SatTraker, showing how to use the software, the beta release video. I've updated the link in that video description to take you to Bitbucket rather than GitHub. So for those who don't know, my GitHub link to my software, the source code of the software, received a false DMCA claim and strike from, I suspect, Nibiru Planet X channel, and I've filed a counterclaim with the help of a lawyer in California, and so by doing it that way, I avoid disclosing my physical address, my phone number, other private details. I kind of suspect that this attack has actually been a strategy in part to obtain those details, and I am obviously not going to disclose them. So using a lawyer, I'm able to keep that anonymous. So Counter DMCA is the website if you look that up. It's mainly designed for counterclaims on YouTube to avoid that kind of problem. But I talked to the lawyer behind that site, and he agreed to let me use it for GitHub. So he's provided that service. And I'm very thankful for that, because I've now submitted the counter notice, and in 2 weeks it should be back online, in theory. I hope that's true, because I suspect most people who do, I don't know, I'm not a professional software developer, but I suspect that a lot of people who do software development tend to prefer GitHub over Bitbucket. I think it's just a better known site. I do think Bitbucket's quite nice, but in terms of getting assistance with development and getting people to try out the software, it's probably going to see more eyeballs if it's on GitHub, obviously. So I still want the GitHub link to be the main link once it comes back, hopefully in 2 weeks. In the meantime, you can still download it at Bitbucket, and if that receives another false DMCA strike, well, we'll just take it somewhere else. We'll just play this game until, I don't know, until I get sick of it, I guess. Oh. So, if you do have an LX200, the software I've developed, SatTraker, is designed for LX200s like mine. I have an LX200 Classic. It should work with newer LX200s, but I can't verify that. In theory, the newer LX200 AutoStar-based telescopes have the same language. They just have an expanded vocabulary that mine doesn't have. So in theory, anything that works with mine will work with newer LX200s. In practice, they may not react the same way to the commands, so the behavior might not be as intended. So it's very experimental. Use it at your own risk. Also, it's only compatible at the moment with altitude azimuth tracking, not equatorial mounts. That will be fixed very soon. In fact, I'll probably get that up on GitHub, hopefully this weekend, if I have time. It shouldn't take very much to change that. You pretty much just do the same procedure. You just replace alt-az with equatorial coordinates. So that shouldn't take very much to do. And I know a lot of people are probably going to want to be using their equatorial mounts to track satellites. So I will be supporting that, but at the moment it's not yet supported. Also, it supports ASCOM. If your telescope is compatible with the move axis method. And just so you know, it's the same way with NeoTracker, my asteroid / comet / deep space probe tracking program. That's for tracking objects that are in a solar orbit, that are not orbiting Earth but are instead orbiting the Sun. That is also compatible with ASCOM, and it doesn't require altitude azimuth. It actually is relying on equatorial coordinates. But it still requires the telescope to be compatible with the move axis method. Now, as it stands right now, NeoTracker doesn't do a check to see if it's compatible or not. It just tries to do its thing. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It'll probably throw up an error and crash the program if your telescope's not compatible. With SatTracker, it's a little more intelligent. It does do a check. First thing it does, actually, when you connect to ASCOM is it checks to see if the telescope is compatible with that move axis method. And if it's not, it disconnects from the telescope. And it tells you in an error message on the command line prompt, says, hey, your telescope's not compatible. So it will do a check. So you can just fire up the program and see if your telescope's going to work with it or not. Generally speaking, if you have, my understanding, and again, this isn't something I've personally verified, but just from doing some online reading, it looks like Celestron Next-Star telescopes will be compatible if they are hand controller version 1.6 or later. To be honest, I'm not exactly sure how you find that out. I don't have a Celestron scope, it's just what I've read online, so give that a try, see if it works. And if you have a Celestron Next-Star scope, generally it's probably going to be alt-az mounted anyway. So those are scopes that should be generally compatible out of the box. If they're not, please let me know. There may be another way I can do it if they're not compatible with ASCOM, if they are Celestron scopes. For Meade telescopes, Meade LX90s, LX200s, they use the same language as my LX200 Classic, so again, it ought to work under the LX200 protocol, but it might not. And if it doesn't, I can probably fix it for newer LX200s, but doing it with LX90s, probably not really going to be feasible, if that's the case. I would love to test it, but I don't have access to the equipment right now. I am going to try to look into seeing if I can get access to some university equipment where they have some LX90s, and see if I can test it on there and see if it works. And if I can find that out, I'll of course let you guys know. But that'll probably be weeks before I can get around to doing that. So, do you guys have any questions I can answer about SatTraker, NeoTracker? And then the next module will be tentatively calling it UFO Tracker, for tracking objects whose trajectories you don't know ahead of time. So not based on orbital elements, but purely based on the video viewfinder clicking on an object and tracking it automatically. So that'll be good for rocket launches, tracking unidentified satellites that you happen to see flying overhead, that kind of thing. So that's something I'm also going to be working on, but I would really like to get SatTraker tested out by some other types of telescopes first, before I start basically changing that program into what will become UFO Tracker. They'll be separate programs, but very, very similar. A lot of overlap, obviously, in the design. But before I start doing that, I want to just make sure that it really is going to work with ASCOM-compatible telescopes and the like. And so, if you've tested SatTraker, please let me know in the comments, and let me know how it worked. And if you have any issues, again, let me know. I'm going to be troubleshooting the program as needed and fixing any bugs as quickly as possible, so that I can get on to the final module in the sort of the trilogy of programs that I'm developing here. And then from there, once they're all working at their most basic level, I can start implementing additional features, one of which, for example, will be logging the coordinates of satellites that are tracked, whether with SatTraker or with UFO Tracker. So by saving a log of the coordinates as detected in the camera, according to the software, it will give you the ability to approximately solve for the orbit using existing software. There's existing programs out there for calculating orbits based on astrometric data, basically the coordinates of the satellite over time. So you normally do that by measuring relative to the stars, and that is the most accurate way to do it. But as a sort of quick and dirty way to do it, you can simply measure it based on the encoder data from the telescope. It won't be quite as accurate, but I think it should be sufficient for getting pretty good orbital solutions, especially if it's an unidentified satellite and you want a very quick answer as to what it is. So that's what I'll be bringing to both SatTraker and its sequel, UFO Tracker, once I've got a little further along and verified that the basic functionality is there. And then there will be other additional features, especially for SatTraker. Things like satellite picker would be nice. Right now it just reads the top orbital elements at the top of the file. It doesn't read further on into the file for other satellites if there's others that present, so you kind of have to manually curate the file to be able to pick which satellite to track. It's not ideal, but it's functional, at least for the initial testing phase. But I do want to implement a more advanced way of doing that, perhaps with some predictive capabilities to show you which satellites are going to be overhead, that kind of thing. That's always a challenge when doing real-time tracking, because real-time tracking by its nature is extremely demanding computationally. So you don't want to be running calculations of every satellite overhead while you're trying to track whatever you're trying to track. You can do it, but especially when you're trying to do image processing, it just doesn't make sense to tax the computer like that. Especially when you've got, users who may not have computers that are quite as powerful as mine. I've got a Core i7. A lot of people could be running with older computers, especially out in the field with their telescopes. So those are all things that are going to require a little more time to implement carefully, hopefully in ways that don't break the functionality of the program. So I just want to test the basic functionality first to make sure that works before moving on to more advanced features. Oh, thank you, Apollo 16. So, yeah, so you have a 12-inch scope at the observatory you volunteer at. That would be fantastic if you could get me in touch with them. If it's a custom tracker mount, I don't know whether it'll be easy to implement or not. It depends on how easily you can basically talk to the mount and feed it coordinates or tracking rates. And of course, I won't know that unless I see what kind of communication protocol they have available for it, if they have any at all. I don't know. But yeah, definitely give it a try. See if you can get me in touch with them, and I'll be happy to help if possible. I was in touch with a guy who had a 20-inch telescope, and it looks like he's also got sort of a custom tracking solution. It's made by a small company that does custom tracking solutions for very large amateur telescopes. And it looks like they may support the move access method through ASCOM, so it may be as simple as just connecting via ASCOM and just taking it that way. That's the beautiful thing about ASCOM, is it's supposed to be a universal driver set that all telescopes, basically all computerized telescopes, can use. However, not all computerized telescopes support the full command set, and the move access command in particular is not universally supported for sure. My own telescope doesn't support that command set, even though doing it the way I do it, it is possible to do smooth tracking of satellites. So basically being able to command it at variable drive rates. But it doesn't really lend itself to that. It's definitely a workaround solution. And so ASCOM doesn't natively support that for it, the ASCOM driver for the telescope. So it's a very much telescope-by-telescope basis, and the crazy thing is even some telescopes that have the ability to directly command their drive rates don't necessarily support the move access command. From what I've heard, the newer LX200s, the LX200 Autostars that have the ability to directly command their drive rates, their ASCOM driver doesn't support the move access command, which is just, to me, that seems a little boneheaded, but I don't know. Maybe there's a reason for it that I don't understand. I'm sure there is, but basically you have to use the LX200 command set for it. You can't use ASCOM, that's just silly. But my understanding is with Celestron telescopes, it is compatible for Nexstar handsets that are 1.6 or later. At least that's what it seemed like when I was Googling it. Ah, so it's a computer that talks to an Arduino, which relays to control the motors. Yeah, that might be a very custom solution, as in there may not even be an ASCOM driver for that. I do have some experience playing with Arduinos and motors, so it might be possible to write something with a program that will talk to that properly. I don't know. We'll have to see it. I don't want to... I mean, I'll do the best I can, but I don't know what I'm going to do when running into situations where, you know, somebody's got a nice telescope, but it's a really, really custom solution that is not going to support ASCOM or any standard command set, and I kind of have to write a very custom solution for it. I don't know if I'm going to end up in a situation where I need to start charging a fee for that or something. Obviously, the first focus has to be on supporting the widest number of telescopes possible, right? So doing ASCOM, doing the Meade command set, potentially doing Celestron specifically as well, even though I don't have a Celestron, you know, just to be able to support those telescopes if it comes down to that. If it turns out that those scopes actually need a direct solution of some sort instead of ASCOM. We'll see how that goes. So anyway, we'll pan around the moon here one more time, and then I'm going to have to close out the webcast. Ooh, interesting, Jerry. I didn't realize that one. Well, no, of course I realized that one. My bot predicted that one. But no, that's an interesting point, though, about it being dimmed by 44% as it goes into the moon's eclipse. So SDO, yeah, is going to have that eclipse on the 7th. That's a great idea. I might try it. Now, I have of course, captured eclipses before with the telescope of SDO. And the interesting thing to me was that when it was going to Earth eclipse, from what I could tell from my prediction, it should have been going into the eclipse, and it really was hard to tell any difference at first until it started to get maybe closer to 75% eclipsed, thereabouts. But if I use my good deep space camera, if I use the S-Big, it may be a little more sensitive to brightness changes. So the video-based camera that I used last time to track SDO on a live webcast, it's not as accurate for detecting brightness differences. It's kind of got this automatic gain function that compensates for light loss, so not the best, obviously, for trying to detect eclipses. But yeah, I'll give that a try maybe with the S-Big camera and see if we can pick up the dimming of SDO as it goes into the moon's shadow. That would be cool, and it would well, it would provide confirmation in case oops. Huh. Did I run out of space on my memory card? No? Just probably made a video file that's way too big. Yeah, it would probably be good just in case there's any claims that it wasn't dimming visible light, it was just something draining the sun, as a certain physicist likes to claim. So let's see, let's pan around the moon here one more time. Just take a look at some of these craters on the Terminator. It's really nice tonight. There's Clavius crater. Really nice lighting angle there. No, I'm not using adaptive optics. This is the adaptive optics I have are only for the S-Big camera. They're not compatible with my Canon, and not really intended for planetary imaging or lunar imaging anyway. It requires a guide star. So yeah, the scene's pretty steady here. I've got the full 2x Barlow on the Canon T5i, so it's at the maximum magnification of the scope. Now, the moon's also last quarter at the meridian, basically, so it's at the highest point in the sky, almost directly overhead, which helps minimize the atmospheric turbulence as well. But yeah, very steady seeing, I think, for the full 4 meters of effective focal length here. Which would have been real nice if I'd been able to track the satellites I planned on tracking. I was going to see, you know, how many rocket bodies and stuff, bigger satellites I could try to resolve as elongated shapes in the image. But it was not to be. I'm going to have to figure out what's going on with my video capture card. It's giving me a headache. I'm viewing from Florida. And yeah, it's directly overhead for Florida right now, basically. Yeah, the Nikon D650. Yeah, that's a It's a good SLR. And I'm sure it's great with that 12-inch scope. It's currently 7:12 a.m. local time in Florida. And with that, I'm going to have to round out and close out the webcast. I got to get ready here. But thanks for watching, guys. Again, if you want to test out SatTraker, go back to the SatTraker free beta release video, and the updated link to the source code is available in the video description of that video now, which will take you to Bitbucket instead of GitHub. And I'll keep you guys updated when the program comes back online on GitHub. I know there was a pull request to deal with on it. I hadn't had a chance to deal with that yet before the false DMCA strike took it down. So I know there's some people who are helping out there with the development and making suggestions and changes, and I want to address those, but can't right now. The repository on my end is completely closed out while it's down due to the false copyright strike. But hopefully it will be back up in about 2 weeks. And I want to thank everyone who supported me. I've received a number of donations, especially in the wake of this DMCA strike. So thank you again to everyone who has donated and supported the channel and supported the development of my software. I really appreciate it. And we'll get through it. We'll keep fighting it. And yeah, it'll be all fine in the end. Thanks for watching, guys. Clear skies, folks.